This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gould.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. I'm Steve Gould. Thank you for joining us. I want to start right at the top. Thank you for all the 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. Please keep doing that. It helps, especially since somebody by the name of The Ice Bitch just gave me a 2-star and said that the show was mundane and stinky. Guarantee you they didn't listen to it. The one thing I like about Spotify is I think we have like 165 5-star reviews, and I've tried to give people a 5-star review on that after just listening to half an episode. You can't do it because they make you listen to like 2 whole episodes before you trash somebody. So that's something maybe Apple could look into. Get on that for me, Apple. So 5-star reviews, really appreciate it if you love the show. And right at the top here, I got to thank the Patreon sponsors. I'm not prepared. I got to bring them up. Stand by. So on Patreon, it's for the diehard fan. If you really love the show, if you listen to all the episodes and you really want to contribute, it's very appreciated. There's 2 steps. There's patrolman and there's sergeant. It's a $5 and $10. You can also name your own amount, which a few people do. There's some people who give way more, which I'm so appreciative. But anything you can give is really cool. It helps pay for the stuff I got to pay for to keep the show going. Patrolman, you get videos of the interviews when available. Sometimes we can't do them, but most we can. You get I will mail you a vinyl TPS logo sticker, which people really like. For sergeants, $10, you get a shout out. I'll answer a question on the show. You get the video interviews. You get the TPS logo sticker and access to live hangouts when I plan one of those. So that's really appreciated. I have to do this. $10 and up. There we go. I have to apply a filter. Otherwise, you guys are so good to me that I actually run out of music. There we are. Appreciate you, sergeants of Patreon. I'm talking about Cage, Edmund, Andrew Horton, Greg Gadbois, Ben Peters, Trevor Daly, Rick McCormick, Scott Minkler, Parker Brower, the great Tammy Walsh, Sean Clifford, Brandon Walker, Sasha McNabb, the great Corey Payne, Glenn Topping, the great Mike Wynn, Nathan Gowan, Jason Lau, Dylan Pyrozik, the great Sarah Pomeroy, Lauren Stimson, Alex Wazik, Brandon Hooker, Jake Pinito, John Shoemaker, James Rose, Seth Wright, Tony Fahey, William James Long, Deputy William James Long to you, thank you very much, Andy Biggs, Chris June, Adam Mihal, the great Gary Steiner, and the handsome Lane Campbell. I always say that about you, Lane, because in your little teeny Patreon picture, you look like a stud muffin to me. I don't know. Okay, that was the supporters, guys. I love you. Thank you so much. If you can't afford to support, totally fine. The show is free. Keep enjoying it. Tell a friend, share it, and do that 5-star review. That's also super appreciated. Today on the show, we're at episode 117. We have a officer from Washington State. He's been a police officer there since 2005. He's served in a bunch of functions. He served as patrol, gang detective, child crime detective, SWAT member, school resource officer, patrol sergeant, and detective sergeant. He's also a writer for Police One, which I personally really enjoy, especially since I'm listed on their 2022 Top 12 podcast to listen to. And he also hosts a podcast. It's called 2 Feet on the Ground Gravity Podcast. So without further ado, let me bring on Mr. Chris Luttrell. Chris, thanks for coming on the show, brother.
Hey, brother. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, man, I could listen to you all day long. Thank you for having good audio. A fellow podcaster that comes on the show, he's got headphones, he's got a professional mic. So good. So good. I do a lot of interviews when I send out the guest letter and I try to prep people for the show and say, hey, have headphones, have this, have that. if you can. Like so many dudes just flip open their laptop and like, hey, and it's echoing and doing all this stuff. And I'm like, oh man, I got to somehow try to fix this. So thank you, sir.
Yeah. Hey, the guests can sit there and listen to this at nighttime when they go to bed until we get into the stories. Then, it's going to get too exciting and then that's not going to work. So.
Right. I've had listeners tell me that they're a big fan of the podcast. I listen to you every night while I'm falling asleep. I'm like, it's contradictory, but thank you, I guess. 5-star review.
Whatever works, right? Whatever works.
Exactly. Whatever butters that bacon. So Washington State, how long you been a cop there?
Been a cop here for 17 and a half years.
17 and a half. And so you guys are, I'm always thinking about retirement, although it's a great job. You should get into it. But we're 32 years. We get 80. How about you guys?
So it is a multiplier. You get 2% a year. So the big number is 20, because if you hit 20, you get cost of living increases the rest of your life. If you hit 19 years, 11 months, and 29 days, no cost of living increase. And that makes an enormous difference. We're talking the folks that walk out at 20 and then start drawing it at the eligible age, which is 53. It's like a $1,500 a month difference compared to the person that walked out one day earlier at 19 years, 11 months, and 29 days. So that's the big thing.
Unless you're injured, you're going 20.
Yeah, you know what? It's been a tough couple of years for folks, and I've seen some great cops leave for different reasons, and that's unfortunate. I'm super proud of the men and women that have stuck in it. And the folks that have left for some good reasons. So it's not that I'm saying I'm not proud of them. They were courageous men and women that did the job for a number of years.
Sure.
Some of them relocated to other states. It was just a better fit for them. But just work with remarkable people. Thankful for the folks that are still, out there keeping our community safe, getting the job done.
In your podcast, I was scrolling through it, little investigatory prep before you came on. You have a vast variety of people on the show. One that was super interesting to me was the female marksman, the competitive shooter. Is she who's she rep by?
So she shoots for Practical Edge Shooting is the company the team that she's on. I don't know what sponsor she has. So her dad is a guy that I credit me still being in law enforcement too. He was either a corporal or a sergeant the entire time I've been at my current agency for the last 15 years. And I want to say at least 3 times I roadsided him, and he helped me get my head straight. Just frustrations of whatever it was going on in that season of my career. Just a great dude all the way around. Totally transformed our firearms program. And I got out of the Air Force as considered an expert shooter. I went to my first agency and I worked my tail off and graduated the academy at the top in firearms. And then I came to my next agency, my current agency, and I got on the SWAT team after a year or so. And I had the mindset of, I'm going to listen to this dude. I'm going to trust that he knows more than me. And he's a competitive shooter. He's been ranked in the nation, the same as his daughter. And he changed up a whole lot of stuff on me, from grip to stance.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is different, but I'm going to listen to this guy. And my shooting went even higher. So just a great dude all the way around. Always ready for a coach pep talk as well. He always has some sports analogy to relate whatever we're dealing with.
You need a guy like that, don't you?
Yeah. Michaela Hill, that was the guest. And yeah, she's just a great woman.
That's awesome. So she started shooting young. I've been a fire instructor for many years, and I did notice with instructing women, my wife included, who I take to the range once in a while, they have really good dexterity. And once they get over the fact that there's an explosion happening in their hand and it's a scary gun, they're usually, in my experience, limited experience with women shooting, they're very good shots. And I attribute it to they listen. Because, they are good listeners. It sounds like you were too, but I've had so many guy cops treat their gun like a contractor treats a hammer. Hey, it's a tool. How long is this going to go? When is can we get out? Can we leave at noon? We got to go the whole day. Like they immediately in the morning start talking about leaving. Like, guys, we're shooting free ammo. You know what I mean? I like shooting.
Totally.
And but when the women I've had who've not had a lot of experience with guns, show them the grip, show them the stance, trigger control, sight picture, the whole thing. They listen, and before you know it, they're shooting, a baseball in the target, and it's like, come on. I've qualified guys that have been shooting, guys of rank for 25 years, and it's like, it's scary to even approach them about changing something because they're pushing their thumb down, the gun's sitting too high in their hands, and they're barely passing, and you're like, hey, LT, we could tweak this, and they're kind of like, get out of here. But it's nice to hear that you were you were listening.
Yeah, thankfully that was what I walked into. I walked into an organization that, one, they were willing to listen to. I didn't expect that, or I didn't experience that at my first agency. First agency, keep your mouth shut, and after 6 years, maybe we'll let you talk. In reality, they let me talk in roll call a little bit once I got through PTO. But I get to my second agency, and like right off the bat, they're like, hey, how did you do this at your last agency? And I was like, is this a trick? Like, I don't want to mess up here. Like, I'm not going to fall into this trap.
May I speak?
And they're like, no, we really want to know. Like, we want to make things better here. So like, if you have something of value to share, please
That's
share
great.
it. And so just that constant mentality of how can we get better? And it's not that we're perfect. We still screw things up, but that's the point of asking the question, how can we get better, right? Is recognizing that we're not always going to do it perfect, and we're constantly striving to make it great. So, yeah,
that's it. And law enforcement has changed like that. I was given great leeway in designing a firearms program that would, forever it was just do the mandatory the state wants. But then at the agency I started at, after a while, they're like, just write do the quals you got to do, and then add some moving and shooting, whatever you think we need. And that was so great. It was great to do it. And, you see when you get guys running around or make them do jumping jacks before they shoot, they're like hard eye roll. But in the end, they do. I was told like by the end of it, they're like, it's good. Thank you. Like, even though you gotta, kind of make them do it. And what you're saying about like not being able to talk just reminds me when I first started on Cape Cod. I was a police officer for 10 years. And they told me that they had a lot of reserves helping support the PD because the population in Cape Cod is wacky. You could have a town with 5,500 year-round residents that goes to 40,000 in the summer. So you could not employ that many police officers, so reserves would come in. But so we had them when I was there, and they would ride with you or they'd direct traffic or something, and they pretty much knew their role. But one of the old timers would tell me, he's like, 20 years ago, the reserves, like when it was mealtime, they would sit in the hall and eat like in a chair. Like they weren't allowed, like it was like, hey, we're going to sit in here and shoot the shit for an hour while we eat. Why don't you grab a chair and eat your sub out there with no table?
I have seen student officers sit in the car during coffee break before. So
yeah.
Not as much anymore, but I think it still happens from time to time.
Yeah, and sometimes it's punitive. Sometimes it's necessary. You made a little accident. Why don't you sit this one out?
Well, you need to sit it out, and you need to type some paper and explain what you just did, right? And
sure.
So I think there is some benefit of there being this testing ground for people being admitted to the tribe. I think within lots of subcultures, within in our world in general, I think that can be a healthy thing. So I don't think it's all bad. Just the difference in, hey, what do you think? And I was like, okay, I'll tell you what I think.
Yeah. And that's the flip side of it too, especially student officers, stuff like that. It is important to learn that. And when I was going to getting into the workforce, my dad was a lieutenant, and he was managing the part-timers and some other stuff, and he was in charge of like internal investigations. And he said, Steve, you're going to be fine. He goes, from what I hear from people you work for, you show up on time, you do what they ask you, and you don't question them. He goes, because I have guys right now that are like, you give them marching orders as a lieutenant, and they're like, what if we do it this way? And my dad just turned around and walked out of the room. Just go to your assignment, dude. These are, 20-year-old kids, in college doing their time as part-time. So you're absolutely right. That is something that is needed. And I was in the corporate world for a while doing insurance investigations. And in the corporate world, the new generations coming up that aren't in a paramilitary organization, obviously, these kids are smart. They're like, people really dish on the millennials and whoever. They're smart, and they're just growing up with it in a different culture. So they're doing things like they get a task from their boss, and they wrap it up in 5 hours, and they're like, "Can I go home?" And they're like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, I did the thing. It's good, and what I need to do for the rest of my day, I can do from my house. So why am I here?" They'll go to a manager and say that. And to me, I would never do that. I would just sit there at my desk and do, minimize solitaire when someone walked by. I would just at least, pretend I'm doing something. So it's just, that's one of the challenges, I think now. So many challenges in getting people on the job now. But one of them is the generational differences. Like these kids are sharp, but they really do. I think the police academy is a good paramilitary police academy where you actually have to be in a formation and you have to have squad inspection, and it all seems so silly when you're doing it, but then you get it when you get to the job and you see how it works and the chain of command and all that. Totally foreign, like to a kid like me who never was in the military. I went in, and luckily we had some Marines and some Army guys in my academy, and they were like, they knew what was going on. They even knew the cycles of like our mental breakdown. They're like, so we're midway through, there's going to be something coming up where we're a bunch of idiots and they're going to take a bunch of stuff away. Then they're going to build us up again. And right before graduation, they're going to bring us down again. And our head DI was a Marine. And that's exactly what happened. Like, he was screaming us at the day of graduation. We didn't park our cars right in the right order that he had instructed us, because we figured, hey, it's graduation day. Screaming at us right before we walked. It was, but now I really appreciate it. Yeah. And he was super fun at the graduation party too. I remember I was taking a leak in the urinal next to him, and here comes the head DI, and I'm like, oh boy. And he's like, Gould. He's like, let's go grab a beer. He got, all tanked. He had a good time. So anyways, all right, enough down memory lane of my own life here. Chris, can you tell us about the first time you responded to a hot call as a young officer?
Yeah, brother, I was chewing on stuff. Stuff starts to mesh together after 17 years, right?
Yeah.
But as I was, this wasn't a hot call response, but it turned into one. So it was at my first agency, Greater Seattle, and we get a call for a guy who's threatened someone, and he's supposedly in this grocery store parking lot. And it's me and my training officer. I'm still in the FTO car. And then we have one other officer with us, and we decide we're going to get close to this parking lot and see if we can get eyes on the guy, see if it's credible or not. He's threatening he's going to shoot these people. And so we get there, we get eyes on him. We put together a hasty plan of, hey, we're going to go up kind of like in an L formation, right? To where we don't have crossfire. Right? All this stuff is making great sense, right? Oh,
sure.
Yeah. This is what I signed up for. And then me and my partner, my training officer, get out, and we're approaching on foot, and the other officer comes flying up in his car. And I don't know if all of that was coordinated or not, because I felt like it was a little not as well coordinated at this point.
Right.
And so now I'm kind of at this jog, right? And the other officer gets out of his car and challenges this guy at gunpoint. I think I'm probably 30 yards. I got a good 30 yards on this guy at this point. So I do the same thing, right? Like, this other guy's challenging him at gunpoint. I'm going to challenge him at gunpoint. We're still L'd out, still feeling tactical here. My training officer totally did a crazy Ivan. Now, looking back on it, I think it was absolutely the right thing to do, because all I know is out of my left peripheral, I see my training officer at full sprint while this guy's totally distracted by these two other cops that are, ordering him to the ground. And I see one of the best Monday Night Football tackles I've ever seen in my life. Just takes this guy out. Now we're rushing up there, and what do I see on the ground? I see a gun. And I grew up, I'm a third generation cop. I was in the military before becoming a police officer. I wasn't totally naive, but I remember like this moment, and it was probably only like a second or two, of just being like, holy crap, this guy had a gun. Yeah, that's what you were responding to, dude. And so I mean, the adrenaline dump, especially as a new officer, it's funny now because I probably have had dozens of calls or more similar to that over the years that I don't remember, but I remember that call very vividly. And one of my takeaways was this was a crowded grocery store parking lot. Yeah, me and my partner were L'd out to where if we had to use our firearm, if this guy pulled that gun out and we had to use lethal force, we were fine, but our backdrop wasn't fine, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there were cars, there were potentially people, and I don't remember any of that specifically, but I just remember seeing my training officer do that. And I mean, he sized it up. He was a smart guy. He had, I think, 20 years on at the time, still in good enough shape to go at dead sprint and do
Spear
a form
tackle somebody.
Yeah. And he solved the problem, and he solved the problem to where we didn't have to use lethal force. So, yeah, that was the first one that I could recall of it turning into kind of a hot call, and just having those big eyes of holy smokes, this could have ended differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Like this is like the movies. Was the guy waving? He just having his waistband? You could see it.
Yeah. So he didn't pull it out. When we challenged him, he kind of froze. And then that's where my training officer just took the opportunity to go in while he was distracted and put him down quick. And
Balls of
the other
steel.
officer, the other senior officer, I mean, he moved up pretty quick. I was, again, 30 yards off. I was a little bit further behind. And so, getting up there and seeing the gun and being like, what do I do now, boss? What do I do?
It's a very dangerous situation, especially for an officer in training, because you're learning, and they tell you eyes open, mouth shut, and you don't want to get in these guys' way. If they have a plan, or you don't know, like you said, like I don't, whatever. So you're not necessarily going to do what that guy did. You're kind of waiting for his lead. That just adds to the stress. What was the report card grade after that? Was he happy with your performance?
This one was so I don't know how they do it. Within the field training officer program, we had 3 phases, and phase 1 was like my father, meaning the nice man who puts his arm around me,
Like a wise sage. Yeah.
Yep, that was his personality. And so phase 1, I felt like I was rocking and rolling. I get into phase 2, and I walk home, or I drive home every night and tell my wife, I think they're going to fire me tomorrow, because I could not make this man happy.
You had that guy.
Nothing, man. And at the time, I hated him. Now looking back on it, man, I appreciate him for riding me the way he did.
Yeah.
And then I get to phase 3. I remember going out on the very first call with the same guy. His first name's Jeff, and we've maintained a friendship over the years. And it was like a verbal domestic or something like that, no crime. And we get done and walk out to the car, and I kind of did one of those holding on to the steering wheel. Oh man, here it comes. I'm like, so what'd you think? He goes, it was fine. And I'm like, oh, that's the way you would have done it? And he goes, well, no, it's not the way I would have done it, but it's within policy. It's within law. It works.
Right.
And I was like, oh, well, how would have you done it? And he goes, you don't need to do it the way I'm going to do it, but I'll share it with you so you have another tool down the road of how you could handle it a different way. And he shares it with me. And the rest of our third phase of FTO was just like that. If he really needed to correct me, he would correct me. But on this one, I executed the plan that we had. He saw an opportunity and deviated from the plan and believed that neither one of me or our other partner was going to shoot him as he charged in, and he took the opportunity. So, yeah, Jeff, solid dude.
That's awesome.
Great.
Yeah, that's it's hard to take criticism, and it's hard to give it too. That setting might make it easier for him because that's his job, kind of. But the good book says that a wise man takes a rebuke and is thankful. A fool, goes his own way, or whatever it says. But it's very true, and it's painful. Like to get, not in this situation for you, but to get constantly being corrected. It's you really do have to kind of swallow your pride and be like, all right, I'm learning. This is okay. Like I felt that a little bit when I left police work for 4 years, and I got back into it right before my academy expired. And I was an insurance investigator for a company, and I had a trainer. The guy was fantastic insurance. He would have made a great cop. He was a cop in the military, but insurance companies pay better, so he was my version of field training for the insurance fraud unit. And I've done police investigations and interrogation and all that stuff, so I'm figuring this is fine. And they hire a lot of cops, insurance companies. So we go to our first one. It's in like South Los Angeles, not a nice place. Lady's lying through her teeth. Trashed her own car, put sugar in her own gas tank. Her fingerprints are all over it. So I do the interview, and but they're a little different. It's a little different than an interrogation when you do this is your customer. Like when you work for insurance, this is your customer you're investigating. So I guess they're as apprehensive as a criminal is, but they're also kind of shocked. Like, well, just pay me. What is this about? And you kind of catch them off guard. And this lady was very sassy. And I did the interview. I thought I did fine. And I said, and this was like the second one I did. And the first one I did, I said, what do you think? And he's like, C-. And I was like, C-? What? So this is the second one. And I go, and this one was better. And I was like, what do you think? He's like, straight C. I'm like, you SOB. Are you kidding me? I know what I'm doing, man. But I even told him a year later, after doing tons of insurance fraud investigations, I looked back, I made myself double click on that investigation and open it. And it was not good. He was probably being kind to me. He told me, he's like, I saw your potential. Like I knew you were going to get it, but I had to be straightforward with you. And when I look at the investigation, I was like, damn, this was terrible. It was terrible compared to what I was doing at that point. It was bad, but I so value to this day, I'll tell him, I so value the fact that you just would not give it to me.
Yeah.
I had that ego of like being in law enforcement and this is insurance. But it because of him, my investigations got like way better. I ended up towards the end of working for him, I got a lot of compliments. And I basically, like, right down to the template of the report, just did what he told me. And he's like, you just do this and they're going to love you. And that's what happened. So it's not just the police world. It's everywhere, being rebuked is, it's an important part of life. But when you're a man, and especially when you get, I was late 30s, you think you have it figured out kind of. You're kind of like, all right, I've been a working professional for a while. It feels like it gets harder to take correction. You know what I mean? And I actively get myself out of that mindset now all the time, so I can learn. Like recently at my job now, work for a small agency, had to write a search warrant for something. Never done this particular thing before. Had to get help. Had to have talk to experienced detectives, and it's kind of like we do A to Z here. There's no detectives unit. There's no court officer. It's me, our patrol staff, and then the DA's office. So you kind of have to be like, hey, I know I've been in law enforcement a long time, but I used to work at a place that like did this. So I had to do it all myself. And this was recently. I had to just kind of be like, all right, you're a newbie. This is what needs to be done for the agency now. You got to do it. So it's a battle with the ego, but definitely worth it. So I'm glad you brought that up.
I think we got to keep that going, brother. There's too much at stake in law enforcement. So I agree with you. The default is to get comfortable, right? And to kind of depend on what I know. But especially over the last couple of years, so much has changed with laws, with technology. I'm asking questions. I have to ask questions all the time, or I'm going to mess something up. It just is what it is, right? And then that feedback loop of soliciting feedback from other people. It's not easy, right? Because you solicit feedback, you might actually get some. Right?
Oh, are you bitching, or would you like to help solve this problem?
Yeah, you sit there and say, hey, I'd like to hear what you think about my performance, to subordinates, to superiors, to peers. They may tell you, and you may end up getting an earful of something going, holy smokes. But I think it's critical. I think we have to maintain that attitude. And I like hearing you to talk about the intentionality of it, because that's the way I think most things in life that are worth doing require. I don't love my wife just naturally. Like, I have to write her notes. I have to make sure I schedule dates with her. I have to think about that stuff and then be intentional about actually doing it if it's going to actually work out. So yeah, I like to hear that you're saying, hey, detectives.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
I mean,
Absolutely. Chris, can you tell us about a strange or bizarre thing that you dealt with?
it was only strange because of my response. I'm going to go back to
I like how this is starting.
Under the bus here. So same agency over in Greater Seattle. I was a CPR instructor in the Air Force, so I kind of prided myself. I know how to save people's lives. Never used it on a human being in the Air Force, mind you, because everyone's young and fit, right?
Right.
And so I respond to this medical call. My partner's inside. I know he's doing CPR. I get there, and the fire department shows up, and I have never seen firefighters, paramedics move that slow in my life. I was like, why aren't you guys running is what's going through my mind. So I run in there because I know my partner's in there. Now, my partner was a senior dude, right? So where was he in the two-person CPR chain? He was on the chest. He was pushing that chest, and he had a family member on the mouth. And I get in there and kind of, I picture myself kind of getting my chest big. I'm a police officer. I'm here to save the day.
I'm here.
Excuse
Everything's
me,
okay.
I have this now. And so I get down to do the breath. And I don't remember where my partner was at. I know he was calling the numbers out high. This is back when we did a 15-2 ratio. Yep. And he's like at 10 or 11. And I look down and there is blood coming down this woman's mouth.
Oof.
And he gets to 15 and he says, breathe. And what does a young rookie cop do? And I lip lock this woman and I breathe. And then I come up and I breathe again. And then he starts going into compressions and I start dry heaving. And this goes on. I swear it went on for 5 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
I think the paramedics were probably in there within a minute and a half. It seemed like forever. I've never dry heaved that many times in my life.
So no ambu bag. You're just going mouth to mouth.
No, I didn't have any of that. Right. Like lessons learned afterwards.
Hardcore.
Now medical calls, I reach over, grab the CPR mask and stick it in my cargo pocket. And that goes in with me every single time. And actually CPR training has changed. They want us now just getting on the chest.
Yeah. 30 and 2 or just compressions.
They tell us no breath. We're trained no breath. Even the firefighters for the first minute or two don't do breath typically.
Yeah. They said they get plenty of oxygen. Just they need to pump.
Yep. They need to get it cycled. And as soon as you stop to breathe, you lose that blood pressure and you lose it cycling to the brain. So yeah, I finally they get in there. I go out to my car. I get one of the Vianex wipes out of the car and I'm swabbing my mouth out. That's not probably, it's probably not for internal use. I mean, like this could be on a comedy TV show of the
oh my gosh,
do, right? So I'm just like, oh my gosh. It's going to get worse here in a second, brother. So I go to the hospital to do all the exposure paperwork. My Sarge calls me. He's like, hey, how you doing, Chris? I'm like, hey, I'm doing okay, boss. He's like, all right, good news or bad news? And I'm like, good news? He's like, it was lipstick. It wasn't blood. I'm like, oh, thank you, boss. Thank you.
Yes.
He goes, bad news. I'm like, yeah. He goes, she had rigor in her jaw, man. And I was like, I failed. I failed. She had rigor in her jaw, boss? He's like, yeah, she had rigor. She'd been dead for a while. Looking back on it, I'm guessing it was probably like a heroin overdose or something like that. She was a young, fit looking gal. But just weird in that my response, that carried with me, for whatever, like a year and a half afterwards. Every 6 months, you have to get your blood work done. Make sure you didn't contract some communicable disease or whatever.
Yeah.
But learning from the senior dudes, get on the chest, folks.
Yeah.
Push that chest. We don't need to breathe.
If you can't do the ABCs of police work, which is ambulance before cruiser, just pump the chest. Oh man!
And now I hear the senior dudes. When you have a medical call out, the ambulance is arriving in front of me, and that's the way that everyone else knows. Hey, let's let the real people that know how to do this, have medical training, do it. And
and they train. I mean, firefighters, paramedics don't run. They teach them not to because they need to be thinking and not running. Yes. So if you see them running, it's usually very bad. Crash, or if they're running into a house, it's usually like extremely bad. The exposure thing reminded me of when I was a natural resource officer for 3 years, and we were on Cape Cod, and there's a canal. So Cape Cod's an island, basically like a man-made island because of the Cape Cod Canal. So we hadn't had rabies for, a few cases here and there, but Cape Cod was rabies free for like all of time. It just did not have rabies. but then it came over. Like we have a train that comes over and picks up trash and goes off Cape, and they surmise that a raccoon or something with rabies was in the trash train, got out. All hell broke loose. We had the USDA agents there. Helicopters were throwing rabies baits out of the helicopters, trying to stop rabies because it was exploding like it had never been there. It was just everything was getting rabies. And we had my buddy went on a call, and oh, by the way, I was part of capturing the first river otter with rabies, which was crazy because they're like Wolverines almost, and everything was freaking nuts. That he must have like kissed with a raccoon at the marsh. I don't know, but it was crazy. But anyways, my buddy had one, and a cop showed up to help him, and we carried and they carried, but we had already been schooled a lot by the USDA agents, and don't shoot the head. That's where the virus is. Shoot the body. Later, we'll send someone by, a technician will come by, remove the head, then they test the head. Rabies lives in saliva and lives in the brain, period.
Oh, wow. So
he's on the call with the cop. The cop blasts it in the head. And then
we're all going to die.
Yeah, they have it in a rabies pole, and they blast it in the head. I'm pretty sure I'm getting these details right. But anyways, so then there was a question. Something did something hit my face? Did it go near my eye? Well, when you call a doctor and you tell them I might have been exposed to rabies, there's only one answer. You have to get the shots, because rabies is one of the few diseases, like communicable diseases like that is fatal 100% of the time. There's no cure. Once you have rabies, you're going to die. So my poor buddy, he's a supervisor, he's a sergeant at the department. He had to go get these rabies shots, and the needle is like this big. They just bend you over and they stick it in your hips. And that's the way that's why they did it anyway. And he said, it's like, I almost passed out. He was like ashen, just like that girl probably looked, he was like blue. But damn, man, I'm sorry for the tangent, but you just reminded me of exposure. Yeah. I'm very afraid of that stuff. I've had calls before when people with like stalactites growing off their feet and out of their mouth, and they're like, I have HIV, and you're like, oh my gosh, you are so sick, but they need your help. And it's like, you just want to put like a glove over your head. You're just like, oh my gosh, I got to get into this right now. That's one of the, I guarantee you that's one thing people getting into police work never think about, is like communicable diseases, bloodborne pathogens, things. Been to some scenes before where you come home and I've actually stood in the garage and told my wife, bring a garbage bag out, and just put the whole thing, bleach the boots, because you just don't know. And if you have kids, animals, anything like that, you don't want to get them sick, but damn, man. Yeah, that sucks. So how your follow-up was what, a year?
I thought I had 3, but maybe I was thinking a year and a half, but maybe it was just a year. But yeah, I just went in, L&I, Labor and Industry, covered it and took my blood. And
good news is she was a drug addict, so probably doesn't have any diseases. You're good. You're fine. Oh man, that's brutal. Chris, can you tell us about your most intense or terrifying call?
Yeah, I'm chewing on intense, lots of intense. Not a lot of terrifying. And I equate that to the fact that I've worked for 2 agencies with a ton of cops. So when I have brothers and sisters on the calls with me, there's been some intense things, but the terrifying hasn't stepped in. So I used to be a member of our regional SWAT team, and closest I'd ever come to having to use my firearm, to using deadly force. Suicidal guy comes out of the house, comes walking directly at the team with a gun in his mouth, and this is 2000, and I don't know the exact date, probably 2008 or so. And I remember this being taught to us at the academy. If someone's suicidal and they have a gun to their head, action beats reaction. The split second it takes them to point it at you and shoot, you're not going to react in time.
Right.
And so, and we have some less lethal tools that we're trying to deploy. They aren't working. And this guy's continuing to advance on the team. Probably what caused the team not to fire is the fact that we had armor, right? We're standing behind armor and there's 22 of us. And so even though it's creating a serious safety issue, we have a little bit more time because of the equipment we have on scene with us. But I mean, I'm talking about, I was trained, you keep your rifle on safe until you're ready to fire. And my gun came off safe. I mean, it was
That close.
steps away. One of our team, I don't know what his role was at the time, maybe team leader, assistant team leader, had taken the taser out of my hip rig and got an angle on the guy and enough, the guy got close enough to us and just had the right angle and was able to deploy that and get the guy to drop. But just being that close to using, and I've had a lot of other close situations, but just not as close of that where I had made the decision and I was going through the steps of doing it, and it was some other great work from the rest of the teammates that allowed us to take the guy in custody and end differently. So
that's rough, man. I mean, is there anything more challenging than being jacked out of your mind and standing completely still? I mean, everything's pumping. Like you should be running a marathon and you just got to stand there.
And I was still a young cop. So like there was a little bit of, did I screw up by not shooting? Right. Like this guy literally could have picked any of us off. He was close enough that he could have. And our team leader at the time, so the other guy must have been assistant team leader, because the team leader at the time in our kind of our makeshift debrief, after every mission, we'd get together and talk about it. He applauded us and just said, guys, if that would have been on the street in a patrol car, I think every single one of us probably would have handled it differently. But we were standing behind armor. We had a whole bunch of dudes. We were trained to get less lethal systems working. And your discipline in not taking, using lethal force, I think was the right call. But there was still that small, still voice saying, but did I not do it right? And I think that sometimes haunts police officers. I haven't had it a lot in my career, but a couple times where I'm like, dang, should have I dealt with that differently, right? Could have I done this? Could have I done that? I've had officers get involved in shootings where I doubted myself afterwards. Why wasn't I there? Well, it wasn't your zone. That wasn't your partner. And you were on a different call all the way across town. Why are you guilting yourself or shaming yourself for not, doing or being at a certain place somehow, magically, like we have crystal balls.
Right.
So yeah, super tough. I think it's especially for younger cops, do the right thing for the right reasons, and the stuff that's outside of your control, you can't beat yourself over the head with. So
absolutely. Yeah. The, a buddy of mine is part of the, Garda in Ireland. He's been on the podcast. It was really fun to interview him, but he's part of one of the only armed divisions in the whole country. And he has pointed me to some like news videos and stuff to check out. And these guys aren't armed like the normal street cop. And use the taser, like when I got trained in the taser, the instructor told us it's a great tool. And when it works, you're loving it. But it only works 50% of the time. And then it's like, what? 50% of the time? He's like, yeah.
This is magic.
Yeah. It just doesn't. And that has always bothered me. Where I used to work, we had federal park rangers in town because they're National Seashore. They tased a guy, but he's wearing like a puffy down jacket. And it was just like, oh, hey, whoa. It he didn't get the neural decapacitation, whatever they call it. He didn't drop. He just said it like felt like a bunch of bees stinging him, And then I see some of these videos from overseas, and it's like these poor guys. I mean, they're thankfully the ones I've seen, the guys have knives, but they are close and swinging at the officers, and they are just shooting him relentlessly with taser cartridges. But he's wearing a sweatshirt or whatever, and it just doesn't work. It's like,
yeah.
Damn. So I just thought about that when you said the taser. It's like, thank goodness that worked. Because like you said, the split second, if that thing didn't connect and he was pissed, he could have just, whoop, boom, just shot you guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking back on it, I'm thankful for the team doing everything they did, solving the problem and getting back to the faith thing. I'm thankful for God and whatever angels are looking out for me,
Yeah. Absolutely. It's in his hands, man. So Thank goodness for that. Chris, can you tell us a a positive, or dare I say, heartwarming story from your career?
Yeah. Yeah, these are the ones that I'm going to remember going into retirement and when I'm an old man. One of the things our agency has, we have a nonprofit that's attached to the side of us. It was organized by citizens. It's called the Foundation, with our agency's name and then just Foundation at the end.
Oh, wow.
But they're a legit 501c3 nonprofit. They go out and raise money for us, and then they help us with unfunded needs. So we needed automated external defibrillators in our car. The city's budget, at least in the biennium, couldn't afford it. The foundation bought it.
Oh, wow. That's
They've
awesome.
done this a number of times. Yeah, it's really absolutely an amazing thing. Another thing that they did with that is they created a community care fund. What our chief found out was that our officers were going out and they were finding people in immediate need, financial need of some sort, and our officers were using their own money.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a great thing. It speaks to the character of law enforcement officers across our country. The fact that I think there's a lot of cops out there all across the country that's going to fill up someone's gas tank when they encounter that person that they know needs a gas tank filled up.
Right.
But our chief didn't want us to be limited to, having that rough conversation with our spouse. Hey, babe, grocery budget's tight for the rest of the month,
Right.
or something like that, right?
Sure.
So when the foundation got started, our chief asked the foundation, hey, can this be a piece of it, this community care fund? And they said, absolutely. So this was shortly after it started. It was probably 2015, 2016. And at the time I was a school resource officer, and I was getting off shift, and I heard an accident kick out near my school. And I knew our patrol officers were stacked up on calls. Like these citizens were going to be waiting for an hour and a half. And I could do this in 10 minutes, like non-injury collision.
Right.
So I get there and I get out, and I'm all business, right? Like license, registration, insurance. Is this your current address? I'm trying to be quick with this because it's time to go home, and I'm going to get these people on their way.
I know the drill.
Yeah. And one of the drivers was acting weird. Like, is this your current address? No. And like at first I don't know what's up, right? Like, is she drunk? Or so I finally pull her off to the side, and I'm trying to get a smell of her and see if she smells of intoxicants and
Right.
figure out what's going on here. And finally she looks at me and she kind of lowers her head, and she's like, I'm homeless. And I moved up, and I can't remember, it was somewhere in the South, in a different state. I moved up here. I'm homeless. I'm here with my 10-year-old daughter, and we're living out of my car. And I was like, okay, it's a Friday night. I'm like, well, you're not staying in your car tonight. Mm-mm. And we're going to figure out how to get you connected with the long-term services, right, that are in our community for food stamps and lodging and all that kind of stuff. But for tonight, on a Friday night, I think I have a solution. So I call my boss. That's kind of our protocol. I've never had a boss tell me no to a community care fund. In fact, my boss told me, so you're going to get them hotel rooms through Tuesday. Okay. Does the restaurant have does the hotel have a restaurant? I was like, yeah. He's like, go ahead. They need breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Put that on there as well. And again, it's the donations from the community that empower us to do this. So I run and get the car. The gal agrees to meet me at the hotel. I'm checking her in. I think this is the first time I'd ever used the program. And I get done working with the staff at the hotel, and I turn around, and this woman's crying. And her 10-year-old daughter is getting ready to cry. And thankfully I'm wearing my sunglasses, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm big and tough. Actually, I'm not that big and tough. Whatever. But I'm sitting there looking at her, and she's like, thank you. And I was like, hey, just so you know, this isn't me. Like, this is our community that empowers me to do this. And she was just like, no, this is you. You're the one that saw this. You're the one that chose to do this.
Advocated for.
And now I'm crying, right? Like now I got the tears coming down, because that's what, listen, I got into this job to chase bad guys. Like, I want to arrest bad human beings that do bad things, really, really bad things to other people. And I want to put them in jail and prison. But I want to impact people's lives in that process. That's the why I want to arrest bad people, is so they can't hurt other people. Right.
Right.
And so when we have the opportunity as cops to do human being things, you sit with a grieving widow who you just told her 35-year-old husband died, and it's going to be an hour until her family gets there. And you're going to sit there for an hour just doing whatever, right? Just carrying her burden for 60 minutes until the family can get there. or in this case, I'm going to carry the burden for this woman, or the community care fund's going to, so that she can get through the weekend, so that she can get connected with resources. That's the stuff that keeps me in this job. That's the stuff that when people are screaming to defund the police and calling me all kinds of names, even though I'm there to protect their constitutional rights to protest.
Right.
That's the type of stuff that keeps me in this job is the opportunities I have to connect with other human beings and to help them move through life.
That's awesome. That's a beautiful story, man. And yeah, those people shouting and taking up all this activism against us they don't know you. They don't know your heart. You can just ignore it because they just don't know. But that's a great story. And I know I've had many cops tell me stories like that and have shared things like that. And it's such a good thing. It's so amazing. A guy in a adjacent town I work to now is like that. He's got a big heart, and he was telling me the other day, we met up and I backed him up on a call that was a disturbance and between roommates, and he later helped this guy move. He came on duty and helped him get out of a bad situation. And I was like, damn, man, because wearing the vest that we wear in the gun belt, I don't want to get sweaty, man. I'm like, but damn, you're shaming me right now in my own mind. It was, but there's cops out there doing stuff like that all the time, and it's never gonna make the newspaper. No one's gonna hear about it. Maybe on this podcast, but it's man, that's a beautiful story. I'm really, really glad you shared it. Chris, one of the most popular questions here is for the people who are looking to get into law enforcement. And I've said before in the podcast that I'm super honored. One of my favorite emails to get is they'll write me an email and they'll name a guest, or they'll name Ken or whoever, and they'll say, I was thinking about being a cop for so long. I binge listened to all these guys and gals, and I decided to do it, and I just graduated or whatever. And it's this is so awesome. This is the best. So a lot of them are listening, people who are on the fence or they don't know, and they kind of use the podcast to get a feel for what could it be like. And although there's no real way to know unless you do some ride-alongs like you should, or you actually do the job. But do you have some advice for these young people who are getting into police work and thinking about taking the plunge?
Yeah, absolutely. Slow down. You need to work hard. You need to go to work every day and work super hard to learn the job and to be a great cop and know how to be a great investigator, all that stuff. You got to work hard, but slow down. Don't try to have a 30-year career in your first 3 years, right?
Right.
Slow it down. Here's the thing. As human beings, as a police officer, you are going to experience more vicarious trauma, more cumulative trauma than any of your civilian counterparts. They experience it 5 times in the career. Some of the stuff that you experience in a week, maybe even a shift.
Yes.
So slow it down. Take care of yourself. We got to take care of our brains. We got to get good sleep. We got to have good nutrition. We got to have exercise. You're going to have to set boundaries in your life and tell people you can't do stuff because you got to go to bed because you're waking up early in the morning. And you got to do that. I can't tell you how many times I sacrifice sleep for my kids.
Yeah.
And guess what my kids got? My kids got a yelling, angry dad when they spilled milk. I wasn't giving them my best. Get better sleep. And then get up and be a great dad, great mom, the other roles that we play in life. So, yeah, slow it down. Take care of yourself. Work hard, but take care of yourself. And if you don't know how to take care of yourself, if some of these health things when it comes to sleep, nutrition, water intake, if that stuff is foreign to you, you're not an expert, find the person in your agency, in your community on a podcast that is really dialed in on that stuff. Listen to them and then implement those disciplines, those habits in your own life.
Absolutely. Great advice, man. I mean, especially for young coppers. I mean, I remember when I started, I also still had a landscape business on the side, and I was doing overnights, and then I would go mow lawns with my buddy, and it was I didn't even understand it at the time, because we didn't have kids yet, but my wife was almost in tears, when you are here, you're not here, because overnights do that to you. And then if you stay up, or if you're not doing extra work, or if you're not doing your side gig, if you're working doubles all the time, you're fried. I didn't realize that till I slowed down and stopped doing that. and it's like it's like almost like you're outside the bubble of your life when you're doing that. You're just on autopilot. You're at a party and you're like, I just work 70 hours. And like, you're not even there. You're like, how do I pretend to be me? You're like playing a role in a play. Such good advice, man. Can you tell us some more about your podcast?
Yeah. Hey, we're trying to explore how do we identify our foundations in life. It's going to help you set those boundaries. There's things that are important in life to fight over. There's things that are important in life to take a stand on. But it's okay in a lot of other things, I think, for us to disagree with people and still have a relationship. I got a really vast, just the folks that I'm friends with, we don't agree on politics, on faith, on how to handle the economy and a bunch of other things, but we agree that we're human beings and we can have great conversation. And as long as they can mutually respect me and give me that same thing back, that it's okay to not agree with them, then I should be able to give that to them. So that's what we're trying to do on the podcast. What are your foundations? If you listen to it, you're going to hear some people that you disagree with. You're going to hear some people that you really agree with.
Right.
And hopefully learning from both sides of that will just give us perspective and give us a gauge of where we do draw the line and where we do stand up to fight fights. And I think in that is how we stay grounded, which is where the name comes from. 2 feet on the ground, Gravity Podcast. How do we keep 2 feet on the ground? How do we keep our gravity in a world full of noise and chaos?
Absolutely. That's great, man. It's a great mission. It is so divisive now. There's so much vitriol between different points of view. I mean, it's like, it's at the point where like, it's like in the 80s and 90s, I remember like parties, my parents at our house and stuff. And it was like, the whole political thing or social views was like Coke and Pepsi. It was like, whatever, let's have a drink, And now it's like, I personally hate you. I can't talk with you. We're enemies now. I'm unfriending you on Facebook. It's my personal mission to not be friends with you and to tell our mutual friends that you're this. It's like, it's really, really nuts. It's really out of control. And people need to find common ground and kind of just respect each other's opinions. You know what I mean? Like I'll tell you honestly, when my wife and I started going to church again, we got, called by the gospel to Christ. We lost friends. They just like, at first it was ridicule of like, what are you doing? And then it was like, just always jabs, just little jabs. And it's like, I'm not doing this to your beliefs. Like what? All of a sudden it's like, I'm like their enemy. And we lost people, and it was like I still think about them to this day, and I still try to love them in my heart, but it's like, man, why did it have to be like that? And I think it was what this country's been through in the last 4 years that kind of made that mindset. So if you're doing a podcast that can combat that, my hat's off to you, man. That's awesome. And I browsed through some of your videos on Police One, and they're so that your guests are so diverse. I mean, it's like people from all different backgrounds, all different professions. It looks super interesting, man. I can't wait to get into it and listen to that. It's good for you.
Yeah, we were actually, my wife and I co-host it. Every other week we do a Marriage Mondays. We do the same conversation, but we talk about marriage, kind of share our failures and hopefully give people some ideas of how to not repeat our mistakes. And we were thinking about shutting it down. It's our first year anniversary. And we just weren't sure if we were making an impact. And over the last 2 months, I've lost count how many people have made some kind of comment to us, even to the point of it's contributing towards their mental health. They were struggling, and listening to some of the guests have helped them. And so we've signed on for another year.
Reinvigorated.
Yeah,
that's good, man.
We're excited.
Keep it up. It is a grind with the podcast. I mean, I'm no one to speak about consistency because I did it with vim and vigor, and then I've been doing this almost a year. I'm not getting sponsor deals. What the hell's going on? So I went for a year. Right, exactly. So then I did it for like a year and a half, 2 years. I took a huge break. I didn't think I did it for a year, and I just noticed, and I was getting 100 downloads an episode or something, whatever. And that was like when I was getting better downloads. At first it was like 20. It was like, oh, man. But then I started to think, I heard somebody say like, just imagine it's you're giving a talk and you're at a local high school or at a small venue and there's 100 people there. It's a lot of people. I mean, you would be stressed out. You would be like sweating through your t-shirt before you got up there to talk to these people, but you're impacting those people. And then I took a break, and when I took the break, I got consistent downloads, and then the show started to grow with it despite me. It's people were listening, and I probably something to do with the anti-police sentiment. The other people who wanted to back the police got more into finding out about police. And I took a year off, and I was getting like 200 or 300 downloads a day with doing nothing. And I'm like, what is going on? And then, because I was going to cancel my Libsyn subscription, I'm like, I'm going to keep it active and see what happens. And then I started getting emails. It's like a year later. I'm getting emails from it. Where's the show? I've listened to all the shows. Why don't the show come back? And I wasn't even ready. I was already dog tired of it. And then this started. And I'm like, am I going to start this back up? I mean, I'd be a fool. I prayed for this thing to work. Now it's starting to work. And I'm like, I really had to motivate myself. And boy, I'm glad I did, man, because I'm on inconsistently. I mean, I've been good the last year, but I'm on year 3 or 4 now, and the show's really taken off. Like I'm not Joe Rogan or something, but for a guy who's a nobody, the show is getting, like way more downloads than before. I mean, like sponsors are contacting me and stuff. I haven't moved on any of it, but I'm thinking about it, and it's starting to be, I'm really getting the rewards of it. And like I said, those emails of people that are like, I did X, Y, and Z because of your show. And I'm like, ooh, geez, I hope it works out. Like, don't don't take my advice too strongly, but it's so rewarding now. So it just starts slow, but man, I think you should keep doing it, man. You got a great presence. You're a great interview. You have a good voice. You speak well, like you're not like umming and ahhing all the time. Like I think you guys just keep going. I think it's going to hit.
We're having fun. We're having fun with it. Here's the funny thing though. Every time we record a Marriage Mondays, we have conflict just beforehand.
Perfect.
Which is good. I think it's kind of funny. She kind of laughs at it. She's like, can we just do it without the conflict though, babe? I'm like, yeah, we probably should. I should probably stop being a jerk. I'll go and eat a candy bar or something. I don't know. I'm going to
eat a Snickers. I'm going to have to hear that, Snickers? Sponsor the show. So now I'm more interested than ever about the Marriage Mondays. So I'm going to check that out. That's awesome. Chris, I can't thank you enough, man. It was an honor to have you. Great interview. Really appreciate it. I'm gonna run the intro here. Can you hang out for just a second? Hey guys, that was episode number 117. The great Chris Luttrell. Fantastic interview. Great stories. So glad he was able to come on. He's an active copper, so like all of us, the schedule is wacky. I thank you once again, the people that come on and give the 5-star reviews, iTunes. I can't stress enough how important that is and how thankful I am. Patreon's out there. If you really love the show and you really want to donate, that's the way to do it. Not only the patrolman and sergeant steps, you get some free extras, but also you get access to the Patreon. It's like a kind of like a Facebook feed that I post to. I post some stuff about work and personal stuff and kind of what's going on behind the scenes of the show, along with all the other stuff. So if you love the show, I would urge you to become a patron, and the link is in the show notes. Also, there will also be a link for 2 Feet on the Ground Gravity podcast. Go check out Chris and his wife's podcast. Sounds fantastic. And thank you guys. I'll catch you next time.